and then we can go ahead and continue, and we can pop a happy face in, a really happy face, something like that. Okay, so now that we've done this, you'll probably have noticed that what we have done is say hello, click this, the focus has been taken away from this text area. The user now has to click back in to be able to start typing again. Now it would be a lot more useful if we could click an emoticon and just continue typing again, but we're forcing the user to re-click in here. So what we want to do is we want to, just before we add this value to the comment box, we want to use focus. So we're sort of binding this event or binding this function on before we put the value in. So now what will happen is when we click a smiley face after we've typed something, we return focus back to the text area so we can continue like this, and I haven't had to click back in here. So that's an extremely useful way to sort of provide your user with a more flowing way of working around on your website. Okay, so the other problem that we have, we'll just address one problem and then the space problem. If I type, say, hello, and then I press, then I actually enter a space here, when I then put a emoticon in, I get another space generated, obviously because we have the text val content, which already has a space after it. Then we add another space, and then we add this last space just here. Now the last space isn't too much of a problem, but if the user was typing something like this, and then was to go and put a smiley face in, and they get two spaces, they're going to have to go back, delete that, make it look nice again, and then they can continue typing. So what we want to do is we want to find a way to trim this value that we initially take from the text area. So what we can do is we can use the jQuery trim utility. So it looks like this, and I'm going to wrap this in the we'll wrap the entire contents of this inside of it. So I'm going to say jQuery. Let's just get this out of the way for a minute. I'm going to say jQuery with a capital Q, it's case sensitive, dot trim, and that's the function. So now what I can do is put this value here, getting rid of this, inside of there, and what that will do is it will trim the white space from the left and the right hand side of the value. So now what we do is when we go ahead and type something here, I can put loads and loads and loads of spaces, click this, but it'll always trim it before it adds this additional space. So for example, if we were just typing normally, I've added an additional space here. jQuery trim will remove this space, then add a space on for the emoticon. So it essentially just adds it in the place that you were. So it's quite clever. For example, if we typed something and then didn't type a space, we still get the same effect. So you're sort of creating a more easy to type and flexible way for your user to type in and press these buttons. So it sounds quite technical for such a simple script where the emoticons are placed inside just here, but in actual fact it's fundamental to how your user feels when they're using this. When you're developing things like web applications, you need to make sure that it feels natural and easy to use. So I could type hello and click here, nice website, and click here, and it just does it all for me, and I don't need to think about readjusting anything or anything like that. So let's go ahead and look at the final problem that we have, in the sense that if I just wanted to put a smiley in, you see it adds a space here and it adds a space here. So at the moment we can't really control that because we've just added a space in here and we've added a space at the end as well. So what we can do is we can perform an if statement and then set a particular variable to either a space or not. So the if statement is going to be if the text area val equals nothing, i.e. has the user not typed anything. So at the current state it will be equal to nothing. So when I click smiley, this block here will be run, and in this block I'm going to say var sp equals nothing, so there's no space there. Now otherwise this variable called sp is equal to a space, and the reason for this is if the text area value is empty, we want to create this variable with no spaces. If it does have something in, we want to append spaces, and by this what we're going to do is just put an sp there and an sp there, and therefore what's going to happen now is when I go ahead and click an emoticon now with no content in, SP will be equal to no space. Whereas if I did have content, it would append a space, as we've discussed the natural feel of it. So now when I click this, it adds no spaces. So we've again created the need, or the not need for a space in this case. Another point to make on this is if I was to click this and it was to put a space here and a space here, and I was to say store this in a database, you might be looking at additional data needing to be stored, and therefore using more data or more space than required. So we're cutting down or eliminating the need for more spaces just by using this simple if statement and substituting in these SP variables. Now you might even want to go as far as actually trimming this again as you place it back into the text area. For example, nice website, smiley face, we've got an extra space at the end, so you might want to then have a submit button to submit that. We've included an extra space. If you would find this a problem, you could then go ahead and say jQuery trim, and you could just go ahead and trim well, you could actually, let's think about this carefully. Yeah, okay, so you could probably just go ahead and say jQuery trim, and then you could just trim all of that. So now you're trimming the whole lot of it. When we come back to it and type nice website, for example, and click this, you see that the cursor ends at this point, and then I guess it's natural for the user to then go ahead and type a space, but you're also, if the user decided to type something and then a space, for example, and do that, we just are left with no white space except for the designated spaces. So you can fiddle around with things like this to make them more natural for the user, and also to save additional characters being used, but I guess in this tutorial we've covered a few different aspects of jQuery and created this simple little application here.